Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday, and that means you get me and Ron for an hour or so uncovering the MAGA propaganda. And it's a bit of a special one today because last night was the event of the year. I don't know about you, but I was not looking forward to seeing that debate, Ron. I was anxious. I pulled all my hair out. Clearly you did the same. Mm-hmm. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that I didn't underestimate Kamala Harris, but Donald Trump was a different Donald Trump. You know, normally it's rally Trump or it's interview Trump. This was a different Donald Trump, and I think we can thank Kamala Harris for that.
Yeah. Reminder that you did not want this debate to happen.
I did not. And I still maintain that position.
Yeah, I don't want a rematch, by the way. I'm good with where we're at. I thought the same thing. It was funny because I was not nervous at all before the Biden debate. I was like totally calm. Oh, he's got this, he knows this stuff inside out. And then that was a disaster. And then this one, I was nervous. So I'm like, maybe that's a good sign, that I'm nervous. And again, I wasn't because I didn't have confidence in her. It's just, this is, she's going right into this for the first time. She did the VP debate and she did some of the primary debates, but she's never faced Trump before. She's
never met him before. Right.
And now it's on this huge stage where she's thrust into this without a primary. And it's like, how can you not be nervous? How can you not be rattled? But she was not.
Well, she did a lot of prep. I mean, it was pretty clear that she was very well prepped. And she also seemed to have a greater understanding of his insecurities and inadequacies and was able to goad him in ways that we've never seen before, certainly not in a way that Joe Biden would ever have done. He's far more into the protocols, and she was prepared to break convention to take Trump down. And you know what I put that down to? Do you remember when she said a week or so ago, or maybe it was at the DNC speech, she goes, "I've met his kind before. I have been a prosecutor. I have met Donald Trump's kind before." So she knows how to handle somebody who is a career criminal, who is mentally compromised, and she proved that in the debate.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because and I'm not taking credit for any of that by any means or on behalf of Midas. That said, I will say that watching that last night was so great for me because all the work, look, for 4 years, I've have pretty much one job, which is opposition work on Trump. Watching every interview, Asen to Wolfie with Patriot Takes, watching every single Trump appearance, interview, and pointing out for media and everybody else all of the weaknesses, all of the problems, all the crazy things he says, and feeling the whole time like no one is using this stuff. No one's doing anything with it, and understanding the possibilities of what could be done with it. And then what happens is the Harris campaign takes over with some of the same people with the Biden campaign, of course, but some new people too. And those new people follow me and follow the Midas people. They follow us quite a lot and retweet us quite a lot. So we know that, we're plugged in here with the Harris team,
right?
And they're getting what we're doing. And then to see them use it last night at such a stage, so much of the work that we have done over the last year was used last night. And it was just so gratifying, and it was so great to see that it worked the way we hoped.
I too had put out a pre-debate prep video explaining what it is that I would like her to do and to reference his lies. That's a lie. That's a lie. Start every sentence with that. We discussed it last week. But I also was very keen to see that she had clearly tried to not play this in a very kind of classic way, that it was running on multiple layers of narrative. And because he's a simple man, and so when she was able to say things like crowd size, it affected him so deeply and emotionally, and she knew that would happen. And in fact, I am of the opinion that if Donald Trump had the opportunity to, he would have talked about nothing but crowd size for that whole debate. All those policy questions were irrelevant to him when he was much happier in the crowd size space.
It's just like I said after the Biden debate about when he brought up the golf game.
Yeah.
And I was so exasperated that it was, no one's posted more about Trump's golf game than me on social. Nobody in America has done more Trump golf mocking, laughing, goofing on him golf.
You are the master golf mocker, Ron. I want you to know that. Here is your crown.
That's right. I mean, it was there. It was there. There was a fastball down the middle for Biden, and he didn't know what to do with it. And so when she's bringing up things like crowd size, look, this is something that we had internal discussions about at Midas 2 years ago, where we said, look, this is something that triggers him. This is something that bothers him. It bothers his supporters. So we have done tons of stuff on his crowd size and on people leaving his rallies.
Yeah.
And so when she brings up people leaving your rallies, I'm like, we clipped that stuff. It's like, and to see him come unglued, like I said, it was just so gratifying to know that whether it's the cat lady, the childless cat lady stuff or that, we know how to get under his skin. And to see someone like Kamala Harris use the tools that we've provided, and when mainstream media ignores all of this stuff, it was just brilliant.
I'm pleased that you felt a sense of satisfaction. Well done. Well done, you, Ron. Well done.
I'm not taking credit. Believe me. I mean, it's a team effort. But
I get it.
but we gave her a lot of ammunition.
But this is the power of independent journalists, the power of independent media, and the fact that we are cutting through, with Midas Touch and all its, all of its proxies, because ultimately the truth, the messaging that people need to hear is often not covered by the mainstream or corporate media. And I was very fearful that they were going to treat this as a two-horse race. The moderator, standard two-horse race without one being a convicted felon, insurrectionist, white supremacist who is currently waiting his sentencing, versus somebody who's very mentally healthy and a vice president and a life of public service. And they actually were able to fact check him in real time. Not a lot, not as much as I would have liked, but they did correct him on some things like it's illegal to kill babies in the ninth month in all states. I mean, stuff that you would have thought is obvious, but I'm pleased they did it. Much better moderators this time round than the CNN effort a few months ago.
Boy, what a contrast, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, what a contrast between these moderators who are very polished, very professional, and firm, versus what we saw in that CNN debate where they just lobbed up softballs and just sat back and just let him do whatever he wanted.
Well, I think Vladimir Putin wrote the questions for the last debate. That's what happened.
Mean, if they're look, I don't want to constantly beat up on CNN. I really don't, because there are many people who work at CNN that I really like. Yeah. But my God, what has happened to CNN? They're just a disaster. I mean, I don't normally call for people to boycotts and all this, but I can't see why. I mean, I like Boris Sanchez. I like a few other people there, but man, that network is lost.
I don't know what you're talking about because I don't watch it. I have no idea what's going on these channels. Like, people say to me, "Oh, have you turned on MSNBC?" It's like, I would never watch these things. Like, it just doesn't interest me. The news is not something that needs to be delivered by 24-hour rolling news. And I used to work for the network, so I do understand. It's called the churn. You just got to keep talking till they tell you there's a commercial break coming up. And in the process of you keeping talking, you say a whole lot of crap.
Dumb stuff.
Right. That's why you're much better off watching a news show that is an hour or half an hour, the nightly news or PBS News or something that actually has a team of journalists who've created something that is worth watching. But, if you watch those types of cable news channels, it will literally rot your brain. Let's show some clips, because we've got a lot of clips to get through of last night's debate. And, we've selected some of the best moments, the funniest, the smartest, the greatest moments, the greatest hits of the ABC debate. Let's start with the moment that Kamala Harris broke Donald Trump. Let's take a quick look.
I'll tell you something. He's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President.
Lovely. There was a couple of issues I had with that clip, and I don't know whether anybody else would pick up on this, and tell me if it's just me. But she said if you go to his rallies, you'll hear him talk about fictional characters, Hannibal Lecter, and windmills giving you cancer. But she didn't say that those were bad things. And my concern is that if you're trying to convert anybody who is either in the undecided space or likes Trump a bit or is a Trump fan, you need to say that quoting Hannibal Lecter is insane and that windmills and cancer conceptually is insane. And anyway, they're wind turbines, they're not windmills. But she didn't. She just kind of, and for me, it's that detail that is important to convert people from understanding that, you know, the normalization of Donald Trump is just to highlight the Hannibal Lecter thing. But we really need to say it's nuts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was early. I thought she was a little slightly nervous early on the first three.
Yeah,
that was,
it took about 20 minutes, didn't it?
Three. Yeah, and then she really got in a rhythm, and that I think was the third question. Is very early on, but I think really when I watched that, I thought she's only doing this to trigger him. This was a plan. This was a planned thing.
Yeah.
To rattle him, to not, because this wasn't really completely in response to the question. So it was like a pre-planned thing that she was going to say to throw him off his game and make him lose his cool. And it absolutely worked perfectly. When she mentioned people walking out of his rallies, I mean,
killed him.
That's the greatest insult that you can give to Donald Trump, the greatest. And he completely came apart after that. He never recovered from that.
No, it was like a gut punch at the beginning of a boxing match, and you know I think his appendix was swelling throughout the rest of the show. She is remarkable, isn't she, Kamala Harris? I should remind people that, you know, for those people that have criticized her because they haven't seen or heard much of her, it's because she's been the vice president. It's such a difficult job, a fine line to tread. You can't upstage the star, especially with someone with a legacy such as Joe Biden. And so that's why it's extra exciting that in this moment, he did the right thing to step aside and give her the platform which she can now really just show who she really is.
Just a couple historical examples. Harry Truman was FDR's vice president, right? His last term. He did not even know we were building an atomic bomb when he became president. When FDR died, they had to tell Truman about the atom bomb. He didn't even know we had one. And so that's one example. I mean, VPs are often like, they have no responsibility. I mean, think about it. Eisenhower was president for 8 years. Who was his vice president and what did he do? It was Richard Nixon. Hardly anybody, of course, everybody knows who Richard Nixon was, but tell me what Richard Nixon did as Eisenhower's vice president for 8 years. He did a whole lot of nothing.
Well, what did Mike Pence do? The only thing anyone can remember about Mike Pence is the fact that he didn't fail us in that moment when the election needed to be certified.
He had no responsibility whatsoever. None. Yeah, so why didn't Mike Pence come up with a healthcare plan or an infrastructure plan, right? Because he didn't have a job the vice president's job is to sit around and wait in case the president dies. That's the job of the vice president.
Let's kind of move on through the debate where, you know, really kind of Trump takes the bait on this crowd size thing, and he then goes into like rally mode. Really interesting. Let's take a look.
Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him.
They're eating the dogs, Ron, the dogs.
The question was, why did you kill the immigration bill? That was the question. He never got to that.
No.
And you know, in the last debate, he wanted to answer every single question with an immigration answer. So he actually gets an immigration question, and he has to go back to the crowd,
to the crowd size.
And I knew, like, right then she had him. And and you know, then he starts launch. The problem is, here's the problem. The problem is that Donald Trump has been fed so much right-wing internet conspiracy QAnon nonsense from Don Jr., from the people in his orbit, Laura Loomer, Jack Posobiec. They feed him a steady diet of bullshit. And he listens to those people now instead of his professional campaign people who don't want him exposed to all of that. So when he talks about Harris busing people in, okay, those were shuttle buses at one of her rallies from the parking lot to the venue, because there was a lot of off-site parking, and they provided shuttle buses. But again, that was a right-wing disinformation conspiracy that he peddles. Talking about, I saw on TV people eating dog. I mean, he's talking about like there wasn't on TV. He's talking about clips that he's seeing on the internet that are lies, that are misleading. There was, you know, it was a clip of a woman who was an American woman, but she was black, so she must be Haitian, right? She was an American woman, American citizen, who got arrested for animal cruelty, and that turned into this big conspiracy. There's no dogs. So it's just like, this is his big Achilles heel, and this is his weakness, and I'm so glad that Harris was able to take advantage of it. And his weakness is that his mind is filled with conspiracy theories and drivel. And when that stuff comes out and normal people hear it, they're just like, what the hell is he talking about?
It's so interesting, the amount of projection as well, because that buses thing that he'd heard, he then also added they're paying people to attend the rallies. Well, Trump pays people to attend the rallies.
Yeah,
and so that was just pure projection. And you get that so much with him. And if you speak the language of projection, the guy is telling you exactly what he's doing at all times.
Time and time again, whether it's accusing people of being on drugs, when he's always acting very sketchy.
Right.
I noticed he had some sweat breaking out on his lip there. It's just, you're right. It's constant projection. You could go through everything he accuses other people of doing, and it's things he's actively doing.
I felt like she must have consulted with a mental health professional in order to.
I thought that too.
In order to know how to get him on the ropes so quickly, and because I do this series on Sundays with Bandy Lee here on the Weekend Show, who is the psychiatrist who basically has given us so much insight into Donald Trump. And she makes this point that, if you start treating Donald Trump as a mental health patient, she reckons you could even have got him to resign the presidency by using mental health professionals to advise you. And she said it would have been very easy to get him to resign the presidency. But there's been a complete blackout on talking about mental health. And it's very frustrating because, he was on show as a really mentally compromised person. And there in that clip where he goes straight to World War III, a future president and past president who even utters the words World War III, it's like a hush thing. You don't ever say that stuff out loud. And yet he goes straight to it.
And he sandwiched his comments about World War III in between migrants eating dogs and crowd sizes.
Yeah.
That was his stream of consciousness.
Yeah, he's batshit crazy, bro.
But I thought the same thing. When I watched last night, I said, I wonder if Harris brought in a psychiatrist or psychologist as part of the debate prep team, because I did see that as well. Some of the triggering things that she was doing to him seemed like somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Or it was the fact that she's worked as a career prosecutor. She's been in prison. She's been in psychiatric units. She has had experience of dealing with these people. As she said that one time when she's like, I know Donald Trump's type.
Yeah. Let me follow up on that too, because I connect with her on this as well. Look, I was a criminal lawyer for 29 years, federal prosecutor, state prosecutor, defense lawyer, spent 29 years in courtrooms. And people have often said when they follow me on Twitter for a while that I'm prosecuting Donald Trump like a prosecutor would. I'm building a case, one piece of evidence at a time. And I also thought that last night watching her, that it was so different than watching Biden.
Yes.
Because I'm like, she is going at him like a prosecutor would prosecute a case. And it was just a great way to do it.
Well, Biden was a public defender, remember? So
that was 100 years ago.
It was actually 100 years ago. Listen, I have this clip of the Haitian story from Springfield, Ohio, where the eating of the cats and dogs originated. Let's take a quick look at this.
It started slowly. We had an application pool that was a little bit different.
People coming to work here.
People looking for jobs. What he's welding here again are welded axle components.
Jamie McGregor is the CEO of McGregor Metal, which makes welded parts for the auto and farm industries. Right now, about 10% of his workforce is Haitian, over 30 employees.
I wish I had 30 more. Our Haitian associates come to work every day. They don't have a drug problem. They'll stay at their machine. They'll achieve their numbers. They are here to work. And so in general, that's a stark difference from what we're used to in our community.
McGregor acknowledges the sudden arrival of so many new immigrants is a challenge on multiple fronts, but he believes this is partly how the industrial Midwest can regrow.
We want more jobs in our community. And in order to fill those jobs, some jobs need to be people who are not originally from here.
A community of more than 80,000 emptied out to less than 60. That is, until the last few years.
Our churches, we see new people.
In the pews?
Yes, absolutely.
Wes Babian was the pastor at First Baptist Church for almost 20 years.
For years, we've lost people, but you hope somebody else will come and take their place. That hasn't happened here.
Until now.
Because there are folks from Haiti who are coming to church.
Lukens Merzus, who, among his many other jobs, mans the soundboard for Sunday services, is one of those new Haitian members.
Why Springfield?
Of all places.
Merzus, with his wife and daughter, were among the first Haitian families to arrive here in 2018.
I got a decent job when I was in Haiti, and then to make a difficult decision to leave, it wasn't easy.
I mean, this is the stuff we need to be seeing. This is the stuff that you know, is the real stories of immigration that Donald Trump has just been abusing in such a way that he's been dehumanizing these people. And here is the reality of immigration.
He calls them Hannibal Lecter. I mean, that's what he's talking. He's talking about that they're all cannibalistic serial killers. You know, this is the picture. That's why he says they're emptying out their mental institutions and their prisoners, and those are the people who are coming here. They're not the hardworking, honest, decent people.
They're rapists. They're bringing drugs. Yeah,
right. So then PBS sends a camera crew into the community that they are actively demonizing, Springfield, Ohio. And what do we learn? This is a small town in the middle of nowhere that over the last 20 years, most of the jobs have left. The plants have closed. The people have left. There's no young people. And so you get this influx of about 20,000 Haitian people that are there legally. Okay, most of them were a lot of them came during the Trump administration. The one guy who was interviewed came in 2018 and was granted temporary asylum by the Trump administration, which was extended when the president was overthrown and Haiti turned into chaos. Look, we have a Haitian community in the town that I live, and I attended their church, and it was a little difficult because it was all in French, but I attended. It was a Christian service. And it was fantastic. They were singing. They were family oriented. They were friendly. They were thanking me for being there. And that's who these people are. They're hardworking people. They're not eating dogs and breaking into houses and raping people. Now, when you have millions of immigrants, this is the problem. The right wingers, they're always going to be able to find someone who did something bad. When you're talking about millions of people, there will always be isolated examples that you can highlight and blow up on Fox News. But the overwhelming majority of these people are good for the communities and help the communities and take jobs that nobody else wants.
But this is what America looks like. It's it's not like, oh, this is a future America. This is America now. America's been like this for decades. And so to create this image of immigrants as criminals, it's projection, Ron, because he's the criminal, he's the rapist, he's the drug abuser. It's all projection. And I really hope that people are starting to get that. Let's talk about January 6th, because he was asked if he regrets anything about his actions on January 6th. Let's take a look at how he answered that.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, What about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
The people in Minneapolis were American citizens. This is his problem, isn't it? He's a racist. And so anybody who is brown or black, BLM I'm referencing, to him, it's fair game. They're all vermin. They're all criminals. This is a combination of his multiple issues. The immigration issue that he has clearly, but the racism underpins all of it.
Yep. I mean, when he's asked, is there anything you regret about January? I mean, what human being wouldn't say, you know what, I really regret that 120 police officers went to the hospital with injuries. I regret that they smashed the windows and broke into the Capitol and were hunting my vice president, trying to hang him. Instead, what does he do? He talks about migrants. He talks about BLM.
Yeah.
What else did he bring it up? Oh, and he blamed the police officers.
Yeah.
The only criticism he had for anyone involved with January 6th was the police defending the Capitol. I mean, I'm so glad that the question was asked. I'm so glad it was asked that way, because he's never been asked anything like this in his numerous Fox and Newsmax interviews. And it was I thought it was good for to remind the country of J6 and to show the country, look, this isn't someone who regrets it. This isn't someone who's ashamed by what happened or is embarrassed and who has learned his lesson. This is someone who thinks it was a great day and intends to pardon the people who were involved.
It is a terrifying thought that, I mean, you said, what human being would say this stuff? That was your first response, Ron. When are people going to realize that this guy is not a human being? And I mean this in all seriousness, because from the mental health perspective, he is a dangerous, violent criminal on the same lines as the worst people in history who are currently serving life sentences, who are in secure units. Just because he was on The Apprentice does not give him license. And it is so frustrating to me because I see it so clearly. And the news media over the last decade have given him oxygen and license and normalized somebody who is so completely deranged and dangerous. It's dangerous. What he's doing and saying is dangerous.
Yeah,
she knows it, though.
That term sane washing that we've been tossing around.
It's an important word.
Is something we've talked about. Somebody coined the term, which is true. What they do is they're like, well, let us tell you, what he really means. Let us tell you what he meant by that. He didn't mean that crazy thing he just said. This is what we think he means. And I've blown a gasket at some reporters who have done this, including some that I like, that I've actually gotten in some pretty heated arguments with them behind the scenes with this stuff, with them doing this stuff. And it's so frustrating to me. I mean, it's frustrating to all of us, but at least I think now, I really think the media is now getting shamed into somewhat.
But it's important.
Kicking and screaming, doing their job. But I think the bottom line is he's entertainment, he's ratings, and that's why they give him a pass on so much.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, people are dying as a result of his rhetoric, and no amount of profit is worth that. Let's take a look at Kamala Harris's response to his January 6th answer.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow.
I mean, he really did look like an 80-year-old man for the first time there, didn't he? You know, an angry 78-year-old man.
Because I've watched hundreds of interviews of him since January 6th. These points are never made to him, ever, by these Fox interviews. They never say, what do you regret about January 6th? They never say all the police officers. Well, Mr. Trump, what about the 140 police officers who went to the hospital? They never bring these things up. So it's literally like the first time he's hearing some of this stuff is coming from her. And I thought she connected all of it up so powerfully to her message, which is to say he has no regrets about this. He thinks it was great, and he'll do it again. And, you know, her bringing up the bloodbath thing again, that was our clip. That was a Midas clip. Right. And we debated it and we talked about it. You know, we argued the context of it and we said, no, you know what, we're just going to put it out and we're going to say, this is what he said. And if he wants to claim that that's not really what he meant, that's fine, but we're going to do it. So again, that was first done by Midas, the bloodbath clip. And there it is in the debate. Fantastic.
Yeah. She is now, as we're 10, 12 minutes into the debate, she's really starting to kind of find her feet and sound very presidential. Next to him, he really is deteriorating before our very eyes. And, you know, for me, this was this was almost like a psychiatric session, watching him be deconstructed by an expert. It was very interesting. I wasn't expecting any of this stuff to happen, Ron.
And you know what's funny is right before the debate, Jason Miller, Trump's senior advisor, campaign advisor, compared him to Muhammad Ali when he talked about his debating skills, right?
Very similar.
And yet, what do we see there? I mean, we saw the rumble in the jungle against I'm drawing a blank now, George Foreman, okay?
Yeah.
Which is the rope-a-dope, which is, you know, George Foreman basically Muhammad Ali got George Foreman mad, let him punch himself out like crazy early in the fight, and then got stronger and stronger and stronger as the fight went on and just beat his butt by the end of it. That's what happened here. This was literally like the debate equivalent of the rumble in the jungle, where he, by the end of this, he was just jelly. She was just beating him and he was just taking punches.
Well, he paid Stormy Daniels 130 grand for a good spanking, and last night he got one for free.
And that one was shorter.
Now, something I didn't expect him to say was to double down on the election, the last election, still claiming that he won the election. I was not expecting this. I genuinely thought he'd put that to bed. We'd heard him the other day say, I lost by a whisker. There's been a few kind of mentions that I'm not the president. But he was back on the I'm the legitimate president and Joe Biden didn't win train. And I was like, this guy is like, he is unraveling before our very eyes. I mean, this is not normal.
To focus truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
Yeah, this is his new get out of jail card, isn't it? It was humor. It was sarcasm. I mean, he doesn't have the brain for either of those.
He would never admit, and he would never admit that he lost. There's just no, it's inconceivable. I mean, you have to understand, if he ever did that, like, his entire base would lose their minds. They'd be jumping off bridges. Like, that's not possible. That's a deal breaker. So when he made those comments, he either kind of, it was a slip, it was a Freudian slip where he let his guard down, or he was being snide and sarcastic. I never clipped those comments about lost by a whisker because I thought, I didn't think he was serious. I didn't think he really meant that. So what this moderator does, because mainstream media, again, what do? Well, I think maybe he agrees that he lost. No, I know he's not going to admit that. So when he gets asked point blank and they're trying to give him the out, it's them trying to sort of lead him to sanity by saying, look, you do admit now you lost, right? And he's like, oh, no, I don't. And I thought that again, that was a great moment for the American public, because I think a lot of the American public out there, those low info voters, don't realize that Donald Trump to this day still claims that he won.
I mean, I think maybe I owe everybody an apology for saying that I really didn't want this debate to happen, because it's
growing on you, right?
It's growing on me, because you're right. You know, a lot of the counter argument to my position was that it is important that we see who Donald Trump really is, and that this debate would expose him. And it did, thanks to Kamala Harris, thanks to the moderators, but thanks to the fact that he is desperate. Because remember, his entire reason for wanting to win this election is so that he can pardon himself or the equivalent and not go to prison. That's all he's thinking about. He doesn't care about abortion. He doesn't care about immigration. None of it. And so it's of paramount importance to him to score enough points. And he's even doing the kind of desperate, you've got to go out and vote. It's the most important thing. And I was thinking, well, if they've already planned to rig the vote with these legislatures who are not going to certify the election, and I'm sure we've got all this to come, then why is he so desperate to get people out to vote if they've already got a plan to rig it? And then I realized, because, you know, last time the various plans for the coup didn't work. And so when the Mike Pence thing didn't work, it's like, okay, let's send in the mob. That was like the last act of a desperate man.
Right.
And this is who we're seeing again. Desperation. He will literally beg people to vote for him because the stakes are so high.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's few things that he really wants to do as president. Yeah. He wants to be president because he wants what comes with that. Power. The immunity, the power, the ability to enrich yourself, all of those, the trappings of the office, all that's what he wants. There's few things he wants to do. He wants to use the office to get revenge on his enemies, to go after people, to prosecute people, go after media companies, deport migrants. Yes, he definitely wants to do that. So there are a handful of things he wants to do. But as far as like domestic policy stuff, he's not interested in any of it.
Well, because he's been told that immigration is a winning formula. So that's why
but
he
he's
talks
also
about it.
But he's also racist and wants to get all of them
He's
out
also a
and
racist.
out of the country.
Yeah. Just as an aside, did you see the Melania Trump video that went out a couple of days before the debate, where this weird haunting video of her that she posted on her social media of her saying the shooting of my husband is not all it seems? I mean, I was under the impression that that was put out because of this debate coming up, again, to sow more disinformation and confusion.
I don't think that. I think that Melania, I'm a Melania, a student of Melania.
Right. Are you going to say she's just trying to sell books? Is that what this is?
So no, I think that it's very important. It has been very important to Melania since 2021 to establish her independence. And that also means financial independence. And so she has done all these business deals with various companies because she wants her own income and she doesn't want to have to rely on Trump. And by the way, all of the Trump people in the Trump people orbit, they all publish their books through one particular company that Don Jr. owns half of this company. I think it's called Winning Team Publishing. Melania's books are not, she chose a different publisher. All of her little knickknacks and products are run through different companies than Trump's. Her finances and her sales of various products is completely separate from the Trump empire.
She's planning her escape, isn't she?
And this book is very important to her, but I think in terms of making money, but I think that she understands that the only people who are going to buy this book are Trump cultists. And so I think what happened is her publisher told her, look, these people are all conspiracy theorists. It would be really great to promote this book, which is coming out in 2 weeks, if you could do a clip saying this would really get headlines, saying that there was a conspiracy around the assassination attempt, and this is going to help you sell books. And she was just willing to read the script. This isn't something she wrote.
It's just so weird. I just was like, what is happening in this country right now? She looked like Morticia Adams as well, veiled.
People thought it was AI.
Yeah, people did think it was AI. They did. That's right.
It wasn't, though.
No, I know. That's what's so frightening. Let's just take a look at. We just want to do a little bit more on the reaction of maybe what the thinking was behind Trump's advisors when he carried on down this election denial road, because they must have been kicking themselves backstage.
You said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, "Oh, we lost by a whisker." That was said sarcastically. Look. There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm. Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And
so everything that he just committed to is old news, even though he just spent a whole minute telling us about it in such a rambunctious way that we had to take it seriously. I mean, the guy is a walking contradiction. But his advisors must have been quite unhappy about this doubling down.
You just hit on it. I mean, because it just clicked in his head at the end of that.
Yeah.
That he's been told over and over again not to talk about this.
Yes.
Not to. He's saying, I'll do a spouse sit down with you. What he's talking about is he wants to play all of Rudy's conspiracy videos, that the water main break stuff and the trucks pulling up in Philadelphia,
ballot stuffing under the table and drop boxes, all that garbage.
Debunked nonsense that's been thoroughly vetted and debunked by everybody, by Republican politicians all over the place and by courts. And no, they weren't all dismissed for standing. That was a handful were, but most of them were litigated and were thrown out because they had no proof. They were calling witnesses forward to testify who supposedly saw different things, and you put them under oath and they were all recanting their story. A lot of them refused to testify. They'd be willing to sign an affidavit for some Trump operative, but then when it came to testifying, they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not going under oath, because they would have been in jail for perjury. So I mean, it was great for the American public, again, because I feel like so many people watching last night never heard this stuff. They don't watch Fox. They don't watch Newsmax. They're not on social media. They're completely unaware that Trump to this day is still ranting and raving conspiracy theories that he won. And so it was great for them to hear him do it again. And then at the very end, it clicked in his head like, uh-oh, I'm not really supposed to be saying this stuff. So he said, well, it's time to move news.
On. Yeah. It's so weird. It really is the best word to describe it. Listen, we have to take a quick break. I want to come back, though, and talk about his relationship with dictators, because a lot was spent on that, especially Kamala Harris identifying that he is being manipulated by these dictators. It was fascinating. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. There's a lot happening these days, and it can feel especially stressful or hopeless when things are outside of our control. But Calm can help you restore your sense of balance and peace amidst outside chaos. If you've had trouble focusing lately, parenting pressures, work challenges, school commitments, if this sounds like you, I know something that could make a real difference. Calm. If you're dealing with a lot of stress, these feelings don't just disappear at bedtime. Trouble falling asleep, waking up in the middle of the night, not feeling rested in the morning, these are all signs that your bedtime routine could use an upgrade. Calm can help you learn to de-stress and fall asleep faster so you can get a restful sleep every night. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Calm knows that everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, and mental health isn't about a one-size-fits-all solution. That's why Calm offers a wide range of content to help you navigate life's ups and downs, with programs like meditations, sleep stories, grounding exercises, and expert-led talks designed to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, care for relationships, and much, much more. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners to this show, Calm is offering an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/uncovered. Go to calm.com/uncovered for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/uncovered. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Ron, this idea that Trump thinks that by befriending Vladimir Putin, that puts him in a position of power, and it's something that Joe Biden could never do, is so naive, considering that Trump is just like a TV guy and a realtor, and Vladimir Putin is a former KGB agent. I mean, this was highlighted in the debate last night, and I'm very pleased that they actually kind of got to really expose in front of Trump that he is being manipulated by the Russian president. Let's take a look.
It is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President.
That was a sobering moment for Donald Trump, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they don't ever, again, on the interview, the places that he goes, the podcast interviews he does on Fox, Newsmax, all this, no one ever says to him, Mr. Trump or Mr. President or whatever, do you really believe that it's a good thing that she or Kim Jong-un or Putin praises you and you praise him? Do you really think that that's like, he's never confronted by that? And she points out the obvious point to normal, average, intelligent people, reasonably intelligent people, which is, look, every country in the world has their intelligence service do psychological and personality profiles of foreign leaders. They do it to us. We do it to them. We know every detail about Putin, his private life, who he's sleeping with, what his hobbies are, what his interests are, going all the way back to childhood. We know this. They know this about our people too. And what they know about Donald Trump is he's the easiest person in the world to play. The easiest. It's so obvious. You just flatter him. Yep. We've seen this with his political enemies here in the United States. People he despises and hates. The second that they turn around and say, whether it's look at Marco Rubio. Perfect. Marco Rubio said some of the most vicious things about Donald Trump in 2016 that anyone's ever said. Horrible things, just attacking him personally. But the second he made peace with Trump and started kissing Trump's butt, now Marco Rubio's a great guy. Vladimir Putin sees this, so does she, and they know this guy is an easy mark. We know we can easily manipulate this guy by flattery to get him to do what we want. And this is what Harris is pointing out to American voters, is that these guys know that they have him in their back pocket, and this fool thinks that they are his friends.
He's so dumb. Just so dumb. You know, Putin played him only this week and said that he would be wanting Kamala Harris to win the election. Well, Putin did that same trick in 2020 with Joe Biden and said he wanted Biden to win. Well, he did. Well, according to the psychiatrist, and I only know this because I've been working with Dr. Bandy Lee, but she reckons that it is done on purpose by Putin to upset Donald Trump, to make him talk more, and because he actually questioned whether or not Putin was only joking when he was at a rally. I mean, it's all about love bombing, it's all about controlling and being the operative. And Putin knows only too well how to do this. Let's stay on foreign policy with just for a minute and take a look at their reaction to the discussion about the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
First, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race.
Ask him for Abdul's second name.
Abdul played Donald Trump for a fool.
Completely.
I mean, this is the point, is that, okay, you have some snipers taking shots at American troops. Okay, fine. So Trump, it's embarrassing to Trump. He doesn't want it. He wants to be the big man. So he negotiates a deal with Abdul to free 5,000 of the most vicious, worst Taliban fighters, because and to draw down American troops out of the country, because what does Abdul know? Abdul knows the U.S. is leaving, and he needs to try and overwhelm the Afghan military that we spent 20 years equipping and training. And the best way for him to do that after we leave is, number one, have very few U.S. troops still in country on the ground, which because of Trump we did. And number two, he's got to defeat the Afghan military. He got some of his best fighters back courtesy of Donald Trump in order to do that. So this is why we say that Trump set up the Biden administration for failure, because he pulled all the troops out, freed up the Taliban's best fighters, and it led to the inevitable problems of the collapse of the Afghan military. And so this is the point, and none of these arguments have ever been made to his face by anybody. So again, it was another thing that was great for Harris to actually stand up and defend the administration's record on Afghanistan, because I can remember when this happened in 2021, I was fuming that the administration was not responding, because they simply wanted to wash their hands of Afghanistan and forget about it and put it in the rearview mirror. But who didn't forget about it is Trump and the right-wingers, who continued to demagogue with very little response from the administration. So it was great that Harris actually went on offense on this.
And he used that quote of $82 billion yet again to describe the equipment that was left behind, when we quite rightly said last week that $82 billion was the cost of all of the effort, the Allied effort in Afghanistan over 20 years. So the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's go to the race issue, because I was surprised that the moderators were prepared to go there with this notion that, you know, Trump had said, is she black? She's not black. She was Indian. Now she's black. I mean, all credit to them for actually running with this.
And Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's
says the orange man.
Just knowing how this all played out and watching that stuff while knowing that makes it so much better, which is what we're going to do right now, which is, look, when she first became the nominee, I said, this is the perfect nominee, right? Because he will not be able to resist. He's going to go to misogyny. He's going to go to racism. And he did right away. His first several rallies after she became the nominee was all about this, talking about her race, sleeping her way to the top, all of that nonsense. And he got tremendous backlash from the public on that. And again, his campaign advisors hammered him, stop doing this. Do not do this. This is not playing well. It plays well with your online crazy base, but it is not playing well with the voters that we need. So move away from this stuff. And he did until last night.
Yeah.
When the moderator brings up and you see the first half of that answer is Trump's doing what his campaign told him to do, saying, I don't care. I'm not talking about, I don't care. She can be whatever she wants to be. And he wanted to leave it there. And that's what his advisors wanted. But he got the little follow-up, which is, well, you did say that. And then he went into Crazyville.
Yeah.
I read somewhere she wasn't black. I mean, it was just like he could not control himself, despite the fact that his advisors have hammered into his head, don't go there. He went there again.
Because at heart, he is still a racist, and you're never going to shake that out of him.
He's undisciplined.
And he's undisciplined. An undisciplined racist. Not a great combination. Let's look to the healthcare plan, because this was one of the great moments. You remember during his presidency, it was always like, I've got a plan, the healthcare plan, I'm going to announce it next week or in 2 weeks, and it never materialized. Let's take a look at how they handled that last night.
Yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
He plays right into it.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
He's been saying this since 2016. This exact same thing. You know, this is another thing. I've watched him do 1,000 interviews, podcast. Again, there is not one person who has ever brought up to Donald Trump in the last 4 years, hey, whatever happened to that healthcare plan that you promised? Yeah. Like, no Fox interviewer has ever said to Donald Trump, you know, what about your healthcare plan that you promised? Why did that never happen? And so for the first time in 4 years, this gets brought up, and he doesn't know what to do. He can't handle it. So where's your plan? What about this plan? Well, okay, I don't have a plan, but I have concepts. I have concepts of a plan.
That was the word of the night.
Working on those concepts.
Yeah. What are these concepts exactly? Are they? Is it expressive dance? Maybe are you kind of are you channeling something that is never going to materialize? He's a piece of work.
It shows how utterly bankrupt right-wing conservative media is.
But it's not news. It's never been the news.
That question.
No, but because I think the American people have projected onto networks like Fox that they are news channels. And it's not their fault, because it's all been done with intention. And even Fox's original strapline was about being honest and, you know, doing the right thing. And none of it is news. And I only speak because I come from Europe, where we do it very, very differently. And when you interview a politician in a news program and they don't answer the question, you don't move on to the next question. You keep asking the same question until you get the answer. And absolutely. It has been, I mean, there have been memes of this stuff, of British journalists literally saying the same question 40 times.
And you know, I agree, and I see it on Australian television too.
Yeah,
I mean, I watch that.
They're so great in Australia.
They're the same. And you know, when I hear from journalists in response when I criticize them is, well, you know, we never get to interview Trump, so you can't really criticize. And I'm like, wait a minute, J.D. Vance is out there giving interviews to everybody.
Yeah,
all the Trump surrogates, Jason Miller is always. Why don't you ask them where Trump's healthcare plan is? But they don't even ask them. So that excuse just doesn't hold water.
It's just not journalism. You know, it is entertainment. It is infotainment disguised as journalism. But you learn nothing. You learn nothing. You're supposed to inform and you're supposed to entertain at the same time. And none of that really happens. It's all entertainment. You know, I mean, even Trump said in the debate, you know, get Jesse, he didn't say Waters, but he obviously meant to say Jesse Waters. You know, that would be a good interview for him, to have Jesse Waters interview him from Fox. Like, that's who he wants.
It's ridiculous. I mean, but, you know, in incredibly informative, substantive interviews can be highly entertaining. I mean, think of the Frost Nixon interviews, which was a long series of interviews over the course of several days, right? I mean, that was riveting. It was compelling, and it made tons of news, those interviews. So you can do both if you're a skilled interviewer, as Frost was.
Yeah. Big fan of the David Frost. And his son actually is now a newscaster, would you believe? Wilfred. Okay, let's talk about this doubling down on the Central Park Five. This is an example of how Donald Trump cannot change his opinion on anything, doesn't understand how these poor young men were coerced. You know, that whole section of the story has completely left him. And I mean, it's just frightening to see. Let's take a quick
President
look.
Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a...
Yeah, let's just leave out all the details, shall we, and claim it was years ago so it doesn't really matter.
Again, it's just another great thing that she brought up Central Park Five, because no one ever talks about this anymore.
Yeah.
He probably hasn't been asked about the Central Park Five in 10 years at least. It's been a long, long time.
And just for context, the people that don't know, that Trump took out full-page ads in the New York Times, insisting upon the execution of the Central Park Five, because
so,
they were people of color.
And he tries to drag Bloomberg into it as if anybody even cares what Bloomberg's opinion is. But the point is, I remember the Central Park Five very well. I was in high school at the time, not far from there. And I remember it vividly. And I remember, of course, when they were arrested, your first instinct is, they got the guys. That's what everybody thinks. Most people think, it's like, oh, the police arrested them. They must be guilty, right? Until you hear more facts. That's your first thought oftentimes. And so that's probably where Bloomberg was, but then, as evidence starts to come in, things change. But the point is, what Bloomberg didn't do, and what a lot of other people, they didn't go out of their way and spend a big chunk of cash to take out a full page ad to call for the execution of these people who were juveniles at the time, when you couldn't even have the death penalty for juveniles in this country back then. And he was calling for the death penalty, for the execution, before even a trial had occurred. This is the point. And so to bring up things like that about Donald Trump, and this isn't stuff he did as like a youthful indiscretion. He was like 40 years old when this happened. Okay. It shows you who this man is, how racist he is, and how nasty and vicious he is, that this is the kind of person that he is as a character. And I love when these historical things get brought up about him, because so many voters are completely unaware. They've never heard of this.
Well, she also mentioned the fact that he wouldn't rent housing to people of color either.
People don't know that story either.
Right. It's a massive story.
And how much he inherited. He brought up so much from his past that so many voters don't know about. There's voters who don't even know about the Access Hollywood tape.
Right.
It was 8 years ago. Well, there are voters who were 10 years old back then who have never heard it.
Yeah.
So you can't take these things for granted that people know.
I was very pleased that Kamala Harris dealt with the gun issue in the rhetoric of Trump and MAGA Republicans, that they're going to take all your guns, the Democrats are coming for your guns. She came up with an answer that I've never heard from a Democrat in this way before. It was very clever. Let's take a quick look.
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to.
Oh, she's good, isn't she, Ron? She's good.
This was the moment that I picked up my phone and I texted the guys with Midas and I said, Joe Biden can't do this.
Yeah.
He couldn't, on his best day, he couldn't do what she just did in that answer. Joe Biden is very good at policy and he's a wonky guy, and he could have given that second half of her answer, which was incredibly detailed, substantive policy answer, but she also weaved into that a play for those moderate Republican voters who don't like Trump.
She did the weave.
And she did it beautifully. She brought up that she's a gun owner and she's not going to take away her guns, and her running mate is a gun owner. And it's not she mentioned that during the primary in 2020 when she was running for president. So it's not like she just made this up. She said this before. It's just been a while. Yeah. And she mentioned John McCain and called him great. She called him great. Well, and when she said that, I was picturing like the base of the Democratic Party going, oh, wait, hold on here. You know, we don't think McCain was all that
Well, I thought
great.
she was going to say the late, great Hannibal Lecter, but she went the late, great John McCain.
But, you know, her praising McCain was just masterful because it's like, you know, she's not against guns and she loves John McCain, and you disparage John McCain and you want to take away people's health care. Just a brilliant answer.
A brilliant weave. That's what it was. Brilliant weave. Now, listen, we have to finish soon, so we've got a lot still to get through. The reaction from the MAGA Republicans to this debate was excellent. It was a sight to behold. Let's have a quick look as to how Fox reacted immediately after it happened.
Now, look, make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. He rose to the bait repeatedly when she baited him, something I'm sure his advisors had begged him not to do. You know, in the first debate when Biden attacked him, he just kept his cool and kept going. In this debate, he rose to debating, and we heard so many of the old grievances that we'd long thought that Trump had learned were not winners politically. Mm-hmm. And there they all were, you know, talking about how he didn't lose the election and all that. I mean, so my sense is that she came out of this in pretty good shape. Now, how long this will last and is anybody's guess. But for tonight, at least, this was pretty much her night.
You're saying she had a good night?
I'm saying she certainly did.
Sean Hannity is in this.
It's going to last at least 4 years, possibly 8. I mean, it's so nice to watch them squirm, but it's very rare to actually hear an admission like that on Fox. How did that happen?
Because Brit Hume's not a Trump cultist. I mean,
Right.
he's voting for Trump. He's a hardcore conservative Republican.
But he's a realist.
But he's a realist. He's not stupid, right?
Yeah.
And he's honest. He's not going to lie for Trump. And he told the truth. And of course, that's in stark contrast to what all of the other right wingers on Fox had to say, which is, Trump won. You're the man. You kick butt. The problem is, this is the biggest problem with the MAGA movement, is the Trump life philosophy that he got from Roy Cohn is you never admit a mistake, you never reflect, you never apologize, and you always say that you won even if you lost. That's fine and dandy. That impresses some people.
It's fine in real estate, right? If you work in the real estate market, fine, screw around, but not when you're the president.
Right. The problem is, you can't lead people, because the only way you lead people is to reflect, and the only way you improve, whether you coach a little league team or whatever, this is what you're teaching people, whether you're a high school teacher or whatever, or a parent. You reflect, you think about what you did, you understand it, you process it. Okay, this is where I screwed up. You apologize, you accept responsibility, and you fix it, and you move on. Trump has none of that in his DNA. He doesn't do any of those things. And that has been projected onto the entire Republican Party, the entire right-wing media, where only the old school dinosaurs like Brit Hume, who still have their one foot in the door of the old way, can admit mistakes and can admit failure. None of the other people are allowed to do that, because if they criticize Trump, they're out. They're excommunicated. They're out of the club, and none of them wants that.
This is why we have to keep reminding people that these channels are not news channels. They are not journalism. They are effectively Trump-funded media. No different to Russia Today for Putin. And these propaganda networks, it's fine if you understand. And of course, during one of the disclosures, was it for Dominion voting systems or something about Hannity's show, where they expected people to believe that it was an entertainment program, that their argument was, well, this is an entertainment show. It's not a news show. So no one should take it seriously. Well, they bring that up in a legal case, but they don't mention
say that in court. Yeah,
right.
They don't say it publicly.
Yeah,
they say, we're just entertainment. We're not overly concerned with facts and truth.
Yeah. Let's take a look at how I think the next morning was this, that they were discussing options for another debate. Let's take a look.
One is October 9th in Arizona.
Well, I wouldn't want to have Martha and Brett. I'd love to have somebody else other than Martha and Brett. I'd love to have, frankly, Sean or Jesse or Laura, somebody else. Let's give other people a shot. But I didn't think Martha and Brett were good last time.
How long was he on the phone for there? Did they have to try and get him off the line, as they often do?
He was there for about 10 minutes because he had to go to the 9/11 memorial thing. But that was really funny because they brought up how Harris said, let's do another debate. And I hope she's not serious. I think she was just saying that to needle him, knowing that he probably wouldn't, and they wouldn't. But what Trump has said is he'll do a Fox debate, right? So this is what Ducey brings up. Well, okay, she says she wants another debate. What if we host it on Fox? Are you good with that? So he is asked, will you agree to do a Fox hosted debate with Harris? And his answer was, I will only consider that if Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters and Laura Ingraham are the moderators. I will not do it if Brett Baier or Martha McCollum are the moderators, because they said mean things last night about me.
I've always found it interesting that he refers to, because he did this when he sat down with PBS, I think. 60 Minutes. and he says, you know, are you going to be fair? Are you going to ask me easy questions? But the use of language in these moments is so childlike. To not, you know, are you going to ask me hard questions? It's like him worrying about a math test where they're going to do like long multiplication. He's going to be like, oh, I'm only really interested in addition and maybe some light multiplication. Where does this come from? This idea that it is unfair that journalists would ever ask anything that he deems difficult, and he just wants an easy ride.
We talked about this the other day when he talked about Bobby Knight. Okay, where he talked about working the refs. This is part of the Roy Cohn philosophy, which is, you know, you're constantly, the people who are the moderators, the referees, the judges, whatever, the people who are in control of the situation, you're constantly working them. You're constantly pushing and prodding. You're praising and you're criticizing, and you're trying to work them in to do what you want them to do. And when he talked about Bobby Knight the other day, which he did, he brought him up out of the blue. It was in the context of this. He was saying Bobby Knight was a great basketball coach, and he really knew how to work the refs. And he would be on the refs all the time, criticizing them. And a reporter would say to him, Bobby, do you think, why are you doing that? You're not, the ref is not going to change his call. And what Trump said is Bobby knew. Well, he said, well, he's not going to change this call, but he'll probably change the next one. And that's what Trump is doing here. He's just like Bobby Knight. He's saying to Fox, well, I'll do it, but Brett, you know, I don't really like Brett. Brett said some mean things to me. I want Hannity. What he's saying is he expects in the next interview he does with Brett Baier for him to be nice to him.
So weird, so dangerous, you know, and we must keep coming back for all of the amusing, because this is the thing with Trump, because he's a clown, it's easy to laugh and laugh it off. But if he had like a little moustache and a hairstyle and a swastika on his armband, you would be like, there's no joking to be had here. This is deadly serious. And this is what we're talking about. This is the level of dangerousness as defined by the psychologists and the people who are experts in criminals, that this is who Donald Trump is. He is as dangerous as these dictators and these violent criminals from history. He just looks like a clown because he wears silly makeup and has silly hair. And we really have to remember that the threat to democracy is not just a phrase, it is an actual thing. That will, you know, he talks about civil war. He talks about World War II, World War III. He talks about nuclear. No one wants to say the N word, but it's nuclear. And it's like, he is goading for a fight. And in my opinion, he will completely pull the US out of NATO if he was to win again.
And
he tried last time and didn't get through with it.
The difference between like the Republican enablers, the people like your Marco Rubios and your Lindsey Grahams and all of this, is that they will say like, and his rally attendees, they'll say, you know, he's just joking. He's just kidding. Yeah. He doesn't mean any of this stuff. The difference between us and them is they think it's all just a clown show and he's just playing around. And we understand, oh no, Donald Trump does not joke and does not play around. He means all of this.
Yeah. It's a real threat. We have to finish, but let's just mention Taylor Swift before we go, because this was, in fact, you posted how it was and how it's going. Let's take a look. Just talk us through this.
Man, when she went to the cat lady, I mean, how gratifying again for me, you know, because I'm the one who found the old clip of the child cat lady thing and posted it. As you can see, there are 30 million views. And when Jennifer Aniston, you know, reposted that on Instagram, my post, I was so happy and just thought, wow, this is because it's reaching people outside of social media. It's reaching people outside of the traditional political bubble. And that's the whole goal of what I'm trying to do, is get my stuff out into pop culture, the mainstream, sports, whatever the case may be. So when she went in her endorsement last night to the childless cat lady and signed it as a childless cat lady, it's like, you know, you're just taking your little piece of work that you did months ago, and it's now going to 300 million people all over the world and making a difference. And it's just like so great. And it's such great messaging, you know, of her holding the cat. It's just such a great, what better way for her to deliver the endorsement than that? It's just so powerful, so impactful, so memorable. And I was happy to be a small part of it.
Ron, if you could maybe cut up a suit, I would be very happy to buy a little piece
some
of it.
NFT cards.
Yeah, I'm totally down. You know, listen, we
the
have to
suit
finish.
I wore the day I pulled the childless cat lady clip.
Yeah,
and
that's the
auctioned.
one.
You
That's
know
what I want.
We have
Little
to learn
piece of the
these things
suit.
from Trump, right?
Yeah. Okay, we have to end right here because it's time, but thank you for joining Uncovered. You can download the audio podcast that drops later on tonight. You can rewind and watch again. Please share and comment and all the usual stuff, and we'll come back next Wednesday and do it all over again. Ron, have yourself a great week.
Same to you. See you next week.